just focused on his career when we moved around a lot within the Midwest. And then about 15 years ago, he had an opportunity to go to South Carolina. And, we enjoyed moving and kind of having the opportunity to make new friends and try new places. But to our move in South Carolina, my son was just starting high school, and my daughter was in junior high, and we were all getting a little weary of the moving. So when we moved to South Carolina, we told the kids, especially like if at all possible, we're gonna stay, let you finish high school, kind of see what that looks like. And it's been great. It's one of those things that, the winters are milder. It's still warm, but compared to what we were used to in the Midwest, it's been a very nice change. And people are, very nice. And we have about a 3-hour drive to the beach, the ocean, and about 3 hours the other direction into the mountains. So it's a good midpoint to be here in the Charlotte area. So
I think the only thing I know about South Carolina besides you and your family now is
yeah.
Myrtle Beach,
Oh, sure. Exactly. Yes, that's very
right?
popular.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought about going there a couple of years ago, and then I spoke to someone else who's from
Mhm.
South Carolina, and they're like, terrain is not what it used to be. So,
Exactly.
oh, is
Yeah.
that so? That is true.
Yeah, it's a little more commercial, a little more it's crowded. It's crowded. If you ever had this direction, I would steer you more towards Charleston or Hilton Head, which are great culture, not as crowded, not as commercial. You get an opportunity to kind of enjoy the best of both worlds. So there you go.
Okay.
That's just a little bit south of Myrtle Beach. So don't not come, just adjust your compass a teeny bit.
There you go. There you go. I'll take your recommendation because I trust you. So thank
Yes,
you.
well, there you go. Absolutely.
So you're joining us today to talk about childhood experiences as well as hidden guilt and hidden shame. So I guess my first question too is when it comes to childhood experiences, what does it mean to have hidden guilt or hidden shame?
That's a great question. I would say hidden guilt and hidden shame is just feeling, I would say, small or insignificant due to challenges or mistakes that we've made that we feel, I think, at the time that probably no one else has had those similar missteps. And by not maybe sharing those experiences, then the weight of that guilt and shame just continues to grow and continues to feel heavy and then ultimately impact, our growth as a person and maybe our growth in relationships and kind of what we feel is possible, for our future. So I think that in general, it just can really keep us from moving forward in the way that we are meant to be.
How did you end up getting involved in this area and why?
In coaching, that's a great question. Due to my husband's job that we talked about before, I kind of became a jack of all trades, master of none. So I did a little bit of office work in a church, elementary school, kind of just admin, trying to figure out my purpose because I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I didn't have a hard and fast trek to going to school and getting a certain degree and that type of thing. But in my 30s, after the kids kind of started to, be more self-sufficient, I was really excited about healthcare, and I was starting to explore opportunities in healthcare that could help me be a part of their wellness in a particular way. So I decided to go to school at 35 and get my degree in radiology technologist. And that was an opportunity. And this was actually kind of about 3 or 4 years after I started to do some more personal work around that guilt and shame that you referred to, and kind of starting to dig out from under that heaviness a little bit and starting to feel like I had the confidence to pursue other things. And so healthcare had kind of always been on my radar, but just didn't really feel like I was in a position to move that direction. So when kind of life and myself and all the things kind of, intersected at the right time, I finished my career there, and then we moved to Charlotte, and I started working with women in breast health care with their screening mammograms, diagnostic procedures, transitioned into those people that, have breast cancer diagnoses and biopsies and those types of things. So I was there for 15 years, was able to train and provide some leadership, as I grew in that career, and I loved it. And then I started feeling kind of a calling, or just that my purpose, was complete, if you will. Like, I still wanted to be a part of helping others, but I wanted to kind of pursue or explore what else that could look like. So I met a few people that were into coaching and wellness, and I've been a spin instructor for the last 10, 15 years. And really enjoy that aspect of pushing yourself physically, mentally, kind of how that all intersects together. So then personal coaching just kind of seemed like a logical next step to continue to be able to create that impact for others, be able to share my experiences and what I gleaned from that, in the hopes of also feeling, that others could be empowered to share their story without some of that guilt and shame, or just encouraging them that that doesn't have to stay that way. And then just creating another opportunity to work with others in a positive way. So it's been amazing, and meeting people like yourself and kind of exploring, not just coaching, yay, and helping others, but then on a bigger capacity, what could that look like? Sharing your story, in a podcast situation where there might be people that I would never actually physically meet or, cross paths with, but an opportunity to still provide hopefully hope and encouragement, and, an opportunity for growth.
I know some of the women that I work with, they suffer from shame more so than guilt, and I explain why. So the shame they suffer from is that growing up, many of them had a difficult childhood, and because of their generation, like they're 50 and older,
Mhm.
mental health really wasn't something that a lot of people talked about, right?
Right, right.
So it was more you keep it inside your household because you didn't want to shame the
Yeah.
family, right? Like that was a big thing. Still to a degree this day. So they had to deal with that even though they didn't have the best of experiences. And then when they got into their adult relationships, a
Mhm.
lot of their relationships ended up failing and they felt the guilt of that because in their mind they're like, what they shared with me, maybe I'm not good enough for a successful relationship,
Mhm.
not knowing that if you trace it back to their childhood, they felt the
Yeah.
same way, but they kept it inside. So when you're coaching some of the people that you're coaching, what do you think are some of the obstacles that are in the way of people finding success in the different types of relationships in their life?
Hmm. One of the best things that I took a chance on was enrolling in a certification, and it's called Primal Question Certification, and it's based on a book from Mike Foster. And it just kind of talks about our needs. And again, some of those things that, depending on our family dynamics, and maybe women specifically, like we weren't really encouraged to have needs. Maybe that was a sign of a weakness, or a sign of, just not being mindful of what other people needed. And so again, kind of just feeling like you weren't able to share, or to be, um, I would say, mm, confident or encouraged to share those things. So what has really helped me, and I, similarly to the ladies that you had referred to, just not really knowing how to process that, how when I was younger, my mom had several divorces and marriages. And so it was kind of I would say unstable. I mean, our mom loved us and she would do anything for us, but in her, I feel seeking of security and safety, when she didn't feel safe or secure in a relationship, she maybe didn't know how to navigate that. Maybe there were other factors, but then instead of kind of trying to work on that and stay the course, it was an opportunity to, move on from that relationship and maybe try again. So she was continue, I think, to try to find herself, and just did, the best that she could. She was a single mom a lot. She had a lot of weight on her shoulders. She had sometimes two jobs. And so I think, as, in the home, we just were managing the next thing. And again, didn't really feel like we should be sharing, our challenges, because there was enough challenges, going on without that. So not wanting to be a burden, or not wanting to add weight to the situation. Um, but as a result of those experiences, which on the primal question that I referred to, there's a quiz on my website that you can take, but it goes through our highest emotional need. So when you take the quiz, and it basically boils down to, is your highest emotional need, am I safe? Am I secure? Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I successful? Am I good enough? Or do I have a purpose? So it helps to kind of, I want to say, narrow down, because of course we all have a little piece of that, but really based on our childhood and the way that we connected the dots as kids. So, and sometimes it's not even maybe a parent child relationship. Maybe it was an extended family member, that did something, or that you were a part of, that created kind of that need. And go forward, you're basically trying to get that need met, whatever that looks like. So for me, in learning more about myself, taking the quiz, getting, some coaching around that, mine was, am I wanted? And a lot of people that kind of have gone through, maybe divorces or unstable home life, am I wanted or am I loved, is very prominent. Now, likely, like if there was maybe a situation or a home life where, the making ends meet was challenging, or, they didn't feel safe, with a particular parent or family member, then they might tend to feel that if their safety or security is at jeopardy, then they're going to fight and do whatever they need to do to feel that safety and security. So, for example, and my mom has taken this and she's very supportive. Hers is, am I safe? So she would definitely, I think, agree that when she did not feel safe, she would try to make those situations different. That sometimes did lead to a divorce or to a marriage, a different marriage, seeking that need. So for me, as I continued to grow up and went into like junior high, the need for wanting came in the way of like boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. So I would, to your point with your the ladies that you talked about, like I was always in a relationship. So I would not like leave a relationship or like break up with a boyfriend until I had another one in the wings. Like I just did not know how to be alone. Like that's petrified me. And unfortunately though, because of the am I wanted, like if I never really felt like people liked me for me. Like I felt like there had to be something that I could had to give to the situation, whether it be physically or support or, being available 24/7. Like it's hard to know, it kind of just depends on what, the situation was at the time. But I never really felt like maybe people were interested or loved me for me, that there was always something more I had to bring to the situation. So kind of in relation to that, I got in trouble in junior high. Shocking that, the parents, when you're a kid, you're like, I got this. And then, as adults, they look and you're like, wait a minute, these things are not adding up. Like you are not going to track practice. You're going to hang out with some boy after school. So their, I don't know, solution was to take me to counseling, which I was like, heck no. And then the second solution was to go to church. And I figured, well, this is going to be kind of short-lived. Like we're just going to go a couple weeks and then dust is going to settle and then we're just going to move on and do something else. But we kept going. So at that point, I'm like, all right, I guess I need to get some, invest in this situation and meet some new people. So I started going to a high school youth group. And honestly, at that moment, that was when I was probably eighth, ninth grade. For the first time, I saw that there were a group of people that just liked me for me. There was nothing I had to give. There was nothing they were asking for. There was no like, exchange that I had been used to. And I wanted that. Like they just seemed content and confident and, just peaceful. And thankfully, it's funny how when we have those, like I was in trouble technically, and that was their solution, but it was probably meant to be, the thing that was able to kind of turn a little bit of the trajectory, how I was headed towards a lot of those unhealthy habits. So that was amazing. And I, as a result of that, decided to go to a Christian high school, which I was excited about. It was my choice. Most of the other people there, that was just kind of the way that they, grew up. So I don't know if they, felt like it was as much of a gift as, I was feeling at the time. So it was like a new door opened. And so in a way, not that I still didn't value being wanted, but I could see what it looked like to have healthier relationships and to have people that really, believed and loved you for you. Um, so as I continued on, we all make mistakes as a result, even though we have new knowledge and a new perspective. Unfortunately, growth isn't linear, which I wish it was. So sometimes we're like going, and then other times it just gets all scrambled up and you're just like, oh my gosh, what happened? Okay, we got to start over. So in my high school year, there was just some life things that happened, and it really put me in kind of a spiral of not feeling that wantedness, not feeling included, not feeling like I knew where my place was. And I reverted back to those old habits of physical touch and, finding love or thinking that it was love, to help me kind of get regrounded again. And as a result, I had an unplanned pregnancy. And at the school that I went to, because of its environment, there were upperclassmen ahead of me that had that same experience. And once they were honest and upfront about it with their staff, they were asked to leave. So that's where, again, kind of the shame, of making a mistake and not feeling like you were supported in what that looks like. How can we help you? How can we encourage you? Like, what are the options? Like, what, can we do for you? It was very much known that you lock it down, like you don't say anything, you just keep stepping, put on a face, and you don't be honest, you don't be authentic, because if you do, you're going to be rejected. So that was really the message that I had gotten at that time. And so I definitely didn't say anything. I was like 2 months away from graduating, um, kept it under wraps, graduated. Then, the truth came out. And it was the shame and the guilt, I think, was just from disappointing not myself, but just those that knew I could do better, like grandparents, and parents. My parents were divorced, but my dad was very much a um, appearance person, which he is still now. And again, I'm not faulting him for it, but you acted a part, you looked a part, you did certain things to be accepted and loved and wanted, and that was not one of them. So, so all that to say is that I was devastated. And, of course, I think as we all maybe make missteps that are more public, because I feel, again, like even though I had a relationship with God, I had kind of drifted away. And I know, mentally they say, okay, well, you're forgiven. Like it's, we all fail and tomorrow's a new day and all those things, but I didn't feel like it was really something that I deserved. And so that felt heavy. And then 3 months later, I had a miscarriage. So that was another just time of confusion where it's like, okay, I obviously sought love in the wrong places, had a pregnancy, let down, like I felt like everybody I knew and loved. And now I have a miscarriage, and I was like, I'm alone. Like I don't have, anything to show for. Like, what is this lesson about? And because of the experience that I had in terms of like not sharing your truth, not being upfront and honest about what was going on, and just keeping it quiet, because if you do tell people, you're not going to be loved and accepted. So I continued going forward for really like the next 10 years. I mean, I did get married, and he was definitely someone I wouldn't have normally chosen. And that was, again, probably God's design, because we're still married and it's going to be 35 years in August. So yay. And I'm sure I put him through the ringer to like test that, am I really wanted?